We'll do a review in Likutei Sichos in Chelek Chav Beis, volume 22, the first Sicha for the Parsha Shemini. This is a Rashi Sicha, and this Sicha, the Rebbe is Mechadish, even though the Pasuk says that Aaron raised his hands, Vayisa Arnes Yodav Vayivorchem. Rashi explains that this was Birchas Kohanim. The Rebbe explains that Birchas Kohanim wasn't said yet until much later in the Parshas Nosei. So how could he do the Birchas Kohanim? It will bring down from different Mefarshim. The Rebbe explains that Birchas Kohanim just means that he used the words that were later said by the Birchas Kohanim. But this bracha was actually not the Birchas Kohanim in Pshutei Shel Mikra, as the Rebbe will explain. Although in the Gemara and in other places, it's mashma, we learn halachas from this, as the Rebbe explains in the Sikha. We'll go step by step. Aleph. In Pasuk Vayisa Aaron es Yodov Goimer, that Aaron raised his hands. This was talking about after the korbanos that Aaron brought on the Shemini Limeluyim, on the 8th day of inauguration. And then eventually the Teitze Eish Lifnei Hashem, and the Shekhinah rested in the Mishkan. So the pasuk says that Aaron raised his hands, Goimer Vayivorachem, and he blessed them. And after, in the pashtus in the pasuk, after he blessed them, Vayered Maaseis HaChatos Goimer, he descended from making the Chatos. Rashi, and the Rebbe is going to explain two Rashis here. First, the first one that he brings down, and then also the Rashi on Maasoy Sacha, Vayered Maasoy Sachatos Arichas, as we will see. So Rashi Oiv Vayivorachem. So it says that Aaron raised his hands and he benched them. What kind of a bracha did he bench them? Rashi Oiv Vayivorachem. So Rashi places himself from the pasuk. He quotes the words "Vayivorachem" and he blessed them. Uniz mefarish, and he explains Birchas Kohanim, that the bracha that he blessed them was the bracha that the Kohanim bench, which is the bracha of Yivorechecha, Hashem b'yishmerecha, Yoir Hashem ponav elecha. Every day, Rashi brings down the first word of each of these three psukim. Yivarechecha, Yoir, and Yisa. The mocker from them Pirush is, what's the source for this commentary that we're talking about Birchas Kohanim? We stated before Rashi, as it's stated in the commentaries on Rashi. Where is the source for Rashi? Is from Toras Kohanim. That's in the Toras Kohanim. Over there, it says that it was the Birchas Kohanim. Further, when Bekama Mekoimes B'Shas, and in many areas in the Gemara, in the Talmud, in the Shas, is Mevuer, it's explained as from them Posik, by Yisa Aaron as Yodov, Goimer Vayivorachem, that from this Posik, Aaron raised and the blessed, Lerent ben op Kama Dinim in Birchas Kohanim. We learn many laws as it pertains to the blessing of the Kohanim. So it must mean that this is the Birchas Kohanim, because we learn halachas for the Birchas Kohanim. So the source directly is from Toras Kohanim, and in the Gemara, it also seems that way because we find many halachas as related to Birchas Kohanim from this pasuk. However, we need to, however, understand Kikushias Haramban, as the question that Ramban presents. We need to understand. Because in Pshutei Shel Mikra, which Rashi explains, it seems like we haven't learned yet about the mitzvah of Birchas Kohanim. How could we be talking about Birchas Kohanim over here? Therefore, beverstein, Kikushis Ramban, as the Ramban asks, Rashi is doch mefarish Pshutei Shel Mikra. Rashi explains the simple meaning of the verse in der Tzivu of Birchas Kahanim is doch in the psukim and the command of the Birchas Kahanim in the verses. Yivarechecha Yo'er Yisov as Rashi bring there up these psukim, what Rashi brings there. State erst später in Parshas Nosei. Those are written later on in the portion of Nosei. Heint, wie kemen lernen? So how could we learn? How could we interpret? Leuten derech hapshat, according to the literal way of learning, as the Vayvorachem do is given Birchas Kohanim, that over here, which is before the Parshas Nosei, which we learned about the mitzvah, was before Birchas Kohanim. That it means Birchas Kohanim, when Birchas Kohanim was not yet commanded at that time. So how could we say that what the Aaron benched them was Birchas Kohanim? So that's the question that Ramban poses. So, but there's a question on Rashi: how could we say Birchas Kohanim? So the Rebbe is going to bring down now what the Ramban answers, but the Rebbe argument is that's really not according to Pshat. The Ramban will dos verantworten. The Ramban wants to answer this as the parsha from Birchas Kohanim, that this portion of Birchas Kohanim, Koch sie ist geschrieben betoira sach später, although in the Torah it has been recorded, it's been written down much later in the Parshas Nosei, is gesagt geworden früher, but it was said earlier. So there was, we don't have it in the Chumash, but there was already that command of Birchas Kohanim. And it was said before that he raised his hands and he blessed them of our posik. Gleich noch Parshas Birchas Kohanim. And there is actually some evidence for it, because after the Torah in Parshas Nosei brings down the mitzvah of Birchas Kohanim. So as soon after that, the parsha begins, like noch Parshas Birchas Kohanim. After the section, the portion of the Birchas Kohanim and Nosei, the pasuk begins by Hi bayem klois Moshe lahokim es hamishkan. That when Moshe concluded to raising the Mishkan, the Torah speaks over there of all the gifts that the Nesim brought, and they brought all their gifts for the Mishkan. So the pasuk is talking, that happened when by Hibiyem Klois Moshe Lahakim Es HaMishkan, and when Moshe Rabbeinu concluded raising the Mishkan, and Rashi brings down over there the notes, that was on the 8th day of the Meluyim. That was the end when Moshe raised the Mishkan finally, and it stayed up as opposed to the first 7 days. They were raising it and taking it apart every day, but now it stayed up. That was on the 8th day Meluyim. So you see already that the pasuk later on is talking B'yem Klois Moshe. So we're saying that what written before the Parshas, the Birchas Kohanim, the command for the Birchas Kohanim by Daber Hashem, Daber El Arin, Kois Varuch No Yisrael, the Psukim of Birchas Kohanim, was also said at that time, and therefore Vayvorachem means that Birchas Kohanim, although the Torah records it later on. But the Rebbe says, "Aber es is adeiche Godel zu sagen." This is very difficult to say, as Rashi learned that Rashi also learns such that it was that the Birchas Kohanim was actually at that period by Yom Shemini leMeluyim, that is when Hashem said it. Because in that case, so Rashi gedarft egers bavoranen, Rashi should have somewhere cautioned as the parsha from Birchas Kohanim that the portion of Birchas Kohanim state in their Torah nit loit seder azmanim. That the section of Birchas Kohanim is written in the Torah not according to the order of the times, somehow that it's not in place over there. Brengen dik dem klal ein mukdamucha b'Torah, and to bring the rule, there's nothing earlier or later in the Torah. So even though the parshas Birchas Kohanim, it says in Nosai after the parshas Seit over there, then still it's out of place. It was said before. Rashi doesn't say anywhere that, so it's very hard to say that this is really Rashi holds that it was said earlier. And as the Rebbe brings down also in the notes, because Rashi does bring down about the 8 parshias that were said during the Shemini Limeluim. Rashi does. Rashi nimmt on. And if Rashi accepts as Parshas Birchas Kohanim is nit gesagt worden bis später, that the portion of Birchas Kohanim was not said until later on, as the order in the Chumash in Parshas Nosai, hat gedacht lernen Kipirush Haramban, then he should learn, as the Ramban explains, that as der Vayvorchim do is not Birchas Kohanim, that this Vayvorchim is not the Birchas Kohanim, nor a bracha stam, but just a general bracha. Was Aaron had gebenched in that Aaron blessed the Yidden beim Verendigen sein Avodah zum ersten Mal. That by finishing, when he finished his service the first time, but he didn't bench them the Birchas Kohanim. And this is something which we find that when you finish the service the first time, there's a blessing. Al derech migefin b'shleim ha'melech b'chanukas ha'mikdash, that b'shleim ha'melech, when the inauguration of the mikdash, he gave a bracha. So this was the bracha that he gave, but it's not the Birchas Kohanim. So the question is, either way, if it's Birchas Kohanim doesn't really fit, how could he do Birchas Kohanim now? Either Rashi should have said that the Birchas Kohanim was really said earlier, which we don't find this in Rashi. And if it was later, so how could we say that this bracha was Birchas Kohanim, wasn't there yet? Rashi should have said they made the regular bracha at the end of his Avodah. Mefarshim Zogun base. Mefarshim Zogun, they explain why we have to say that this is a Birchas Kohanim, because we see this was done just by Aaron. Later on, the pasuk says that Aaron and Moshe benched them. But over here it says just that Aaron benched, so it must be a unique bracha for the Birchas Kohanim. Mefarshim Zogun as der Hechlech zu lernen as Vayvorchim. Why are we forced to learn that Vayvorchim mean Birchas Kohanim and not just a bracha, like by Shlomo HaMelech that the Rebbe brings down? Is from the fact was dohot blois Aaron gebenched Yidden, and that here was just Aaron benching the Yidden under the status from Moshe, without Moshe's participation. Nicht wie die bracha was wird gesagt gleich nach dem, unlike the blessing which is follows immediately. But there it says Vayovoi Moshe v'Aaron goimer vayvorchu esau. Moshe and Aaron blessed the people. So over there, Moshe was part of the bracha. This after this, and here it says just Aaron is the fun verstandig. So from that we understand as the bracha had gehat hashayches nor to Aaron, that blessing had a connection only to Aaron. And therefore, the far is Rashi mefarish, and that's why Rashi explains Ados is given Birchas Kohanim. Bracha for the Kohanim, because only Aaron was a kohen. And since that day, Aaron has been trained in all the avodas that we discuss in the parsha, he was also trained in the Siyas Kapayim, raising the hands, that bracha, which is also like an avodah. Okay, so that means that it's Birchas Kahanim. So the Rebbe says, okay, so while you have a proof that it is Birchas Kahanim, not just a regular bracha, but still, how could we say it means the Birchas Kahanim when it wasn't said then yet? And then we have a few more questions. Even though we have a proof, something that forces us to say, as the bracha that this blessing had a connection specifically to Aaron as a kohen, is noch alt schwer zu sagen, das ist Birchas Kahanim. It is still difficult to say that this is Birchas Kahanim. And this is problems, noisef alanal, in addition to the problem that we already raised before, as der Tzivu of Birchas Kahanim steht erst in Parshas Nosei, that the command for the Birchas Kahanim is written in Parshas Nosei. How could he bench now the Birchas Kahanim, which has not yet been written? But the Rebbe says, if we shall say that this was an inauguration, so number one, how come we find everything that Moshe was supposed to train Aaron? Why don't we find that he was supposed to train him with the Birchas Kahanim? Aleph. If this bracha that Aaron was giving was that he was training him to raise his hands to do the Birchas Kahanim, there should have been a very clear command. Just as Moshe instructed Aaron about all the services that he was training him, that Aaron did that day. We find all the korbanos, everything he told him to do, but we don't find that a command that the Eibusha should say that Moshe should tell him to do the Nesiyas Kapayim. It just says that he benched. It doesn't say that Moshe trained him for that. And number two, if this is Nesiyas Kapayim, how come the other Kahanim did not participate? Is the mitzvah on the Kohanim, all Kahanim, base. If this is Nesiyas Kapayim, is no mitzvah sasei. If you hadn't Kohen, that's a positive mitzvah on every Kohen. Ein Farvo, so then why haben die Bnei Aaron sich nicht mishtatev given in der Birchas Kahanim? How come the sons of Aaron did not participate in this bracha of the Kahanim? But chinuch genau, as training, they should have trained as well. Or that alski mitzvah sasei, or perhaps it was already the time to do the mitzvah sasei. If there was already a mitzvah sasei then for the Birchas Kahanim. Similar to their participation, the other activities is recorded in the Psukim that they participated in the inauguration, they participated in the training. So how come they didn't participate if this is Birchas Kahanim? And number three, even Moshe should have technically participated because during the Shemini L'Maluim, he was still a Kohen then. Gimel, B'Shemini L'Maluim is Zoich Moshe given a Kohen. On the 8th of Maluim, Moshe was also a Kohen. V'Rashot Shemifarish given as B'Ches L'Maluim Hushvu Kulum L'Kehuna. Rashi already explained that on the 8th day of the inauguration, so also Moshe was equally with everybody else to the kahuna. So Moshe himself should have participated in the Bichas Kahanim. Is as Moshe hat nit gedarft haben kein Chinuch l'Nesias Kapayim. So let it be true. He did not need to be inaugurated for Nesias Kapayim, as the Rebbe points in the note, because after this day, according to Rashi Shita, Moshe no longer served as a Kohen, so he didn't need to train. But the mitzvah is as Moshe nit gedarft haben kein Chinuch the Nesias Kapayim. Let it be true that he did not need to be trained to raising his hands for the Bichas Kahanim, because he didn't have to do it later on. Aber farvos soll sich nicht mishtater sein in dem Nesias Kapayim von dem Tag. But why should he not participate in the raising of the hands in Bichas Kahanim that day? Ubefrat, as Leut Rashi, especially according to Rashi, at Moshe Giton Alavedus Hayom, Moshe Rabbeinu did all the services of the day, Haragilas, the regular, besides the special that the Eibishter said that Moshe should tell Aaron to do, but the regular, the Korban Tomei, other things Rashi already brought out before, and the Rebbe explained it elsewhere in the Sikha, that all the Avedis were done by Moshe. He did it during the 8th day of inaugurations. Moshe Rabbeinu did it. So one of the Avedis, or one of the mitzvahs, is the Bichas Kahanim. Why didn't he do the Bichas Kahanim as well? Onit Aaron. Aaron, it was Moshe Rabbeinu that did everything else besides what Aaron was specifically commanded to do, but everything else was done by Moshe. So how come here it's just Aaron doing if it's the Nesias Kapayim? So the Rebbe is going to prove from all this is not really Nesias Kapayim. It's not Bichas Kahanim. I state the Rashi Bichas Kahanim, so we'll wait for the Rebbe's answer. The Rebbe says that it is the Bichas Kahanim, but not the mitzvah Bichas Kahanim. He blessed them because that was connected. These things, as we'll explain by them. But next, there's the next Rashi, noch die Wörter Birchas Kahanim. Now, next Rashi, the Rashi, after the Birchas Kahanim is Rashi Meisiv Kinal. Rashi adds, Yevarechecho Yoyer Yisor. He specifically heiches out, he articulates what the Birchas Kahanim is. Doesn't say he blessed them with the Birchas Kahanim. He says, Yevarechecho Yoyer Yisor. Is Tomua. This is a little surprising. The Meforshim fragen, as the Meforshim ask, noch was darf Rashi meisiv sein by the noch was darf Rashi meisiv sein die Wörter? Why is it necessary for Rashi to add these words to his commentary? It's doch pashut. This seems to be obvious, afilu ba'akin, even by a child. As Birchas Kahanim meant, Yivarechecho Yoyer Yisa. That Birchas Kahanim means Yivarechecho Yoyer Yisa. These are the three brachas, the three psukim. Afila Eib Mizol Zagum Bedoichev. Even if we're going to say we'll try to squeeze, as Rashi Falosich don't need as their Talmud base for them. That here Rashi does not rely that the student really knows what the brachas are. Because this he had not yet learned in Chumash, as we said, this is later on in the portion of Nasai. Then Rashi didn't have to touch out the beginning of each of these Pesukim. He could have said Yevarechecho, etc. Pavos izer mefaret alle drei brachas. Why does he have to detail, specify, and articulate all the three brachas? Yevarechecho, Yoyer, and Yisa. The Porshim answer as the drei lishonis that these three languages of Yivarechecha, Yoir, Yiso, they correspond to the three korbanos. The Zayin and Kineged, the drei korbanos was very oizgerechen do in Posik. They correspond to the three korbanos that are enumerated in the Posik. And therefore, the blessing fits with them, which is the korban chatos and the korban oila and the korban shlomim that were brought by Aaron. Now, what's the connection to specifically to them? So Rebbe explains now in the bracket. By Yivarechecha, why is that connected to the chatos? Yivarechecha state v'yishmerecha, Yivarech Hashem v'yishmerecha. He'll protect you. Was meant shmira min achet, which means he'll protect you from sin. Shelo yavoyu l'klal chatos, so they don't come to the chatos. That's the korban chatos, and this is the bracha. You shouldn't need a chatos. Then when it says yoir, the second pasuk is kineged oila, should enlighten you, which that would correspond to the oila. Was kumt al hamachshava ra, which comes for bad thought. It is a sin intellectually which shines to the person. So it should be Yoir, Hashem should shine you, so we should come to that sin. And finally, when Yisov was verendigt sich mit Yosem Chasholem, the third pasuk, Yisov Rashi quotes, which concludes with the words Shalom, is Keneged Shlomim. That corresponds to the Korban Shlomim. Because the Korban Shlomim Shemeisim Shalom Ba'olam, it makes peace in the world. And Rashi says, if the world exists between them, or the Bailam, different interpretations, Rashi brought down in Vayikra Gimel Aleph, the Rebbe brings down the note. And therefore, these are these three brachas that he gave them corresponding to the three korbanos. Und davon lernt man ab as the bracha da, and that's how we know that this is birchas kohanim is given nit ki birchas shloima, not like blessing of shloima, which was just a blessing for the that came in association with completing the work, nor birchas kohanim. But here we're talking about the birchas kohanim. Val davke di brachas seinen masim to the korban of the shteido impossible, because specifically these blessings fit the korbanos that are in this pasuk. That's why, because they correspond. That's why I know it's birchas kohanim. But the Rebbe says this is like very stretched. This is very difficult to interpret so Rashi. This is a weiter remes. This is a distant hint. Und over Rashi will dazu mekaving even had Rashi really intended this, wollte das sicher abgeteilt befehlish, then for sure he would have interpreted this very clearly and said so openly instead of there's no hint in the Rashi, even there's a distant hint. Therefore, it's not really answers us that this is the Birchas Kohanim, and we don't understand why does Rashi have to bring down Bechlal these words Yivarecho Yisa, Yoyer and Yisa. Then we have the next Rashi. Dalet. The noch stellt sich Rashi auf dem Wort. Rashi placed himself on the word. It says Vayedet. So the pasuk says that he finished Vayivorech es ha'am. Rashi Birchas Kohanim. And after he finished benching, it says the pasuk Vayedet, and he went down. Ma'aseh sachatos, the pasuk says he went down from making the chatos. So Rashi touched up. Where did he go down from? Word Vayedet. Und is mefarish ma'ala mizbeach, that he went down from the mizbeach. Well, it's very difficult. We all know that the korban chatos is done on the mizbeach. So we know where he's going down from the Mizbeach. Why does Rashi have to say that? Darf man verstehen. So we need to understand. In Pasuk state beferish, the Pasuk very clearly states Vayered me'asois hachatos, that he descended from making the chatos gomer. Was asiyas hachatos gomer is doch auf dem Mizbeach, wie gesagt früher. Making the chatos is on the Mizbeach. As the Pasuk said before, that he went on the Mizbeach and he did the Karbonis. Ein was tut auf Rashi mit seinem Pirush? So what is Rashi coming to accomplish here by interpreting Me'al HaMizbeach? He went down from the Mizbeach. Of course. Was mir wollt allein nicht verstanden vom Pasuk? What would we not, that we would not understand from the Pasuk itself? Why does Rashi have to say that? So, actually, there is other mefarshim that want to say that it means just that he went down from the Mizbeach to tell you that the blessing was done. It's a Vayvorachem, and he blessed them. Aaron blessed them. So if you read the pasuk, it seems he blessed them, and then he went down from making the chatos, meaning that the blessing took place while he was on the Mizbeach, and then he descended. Rashi is trying to tell you the mefarshim that fakert. He blessed them, Vayered Mala Mizbeach, which took place after making the chatos, and then he blessed them. Paran, the mefarshim, Zogun, there are mefarshim that say, as the mit vil Rashi bavonen, that Rashi is trying to teach us over here, as mizon nit meinen, that you should not think as der Vayered is given noch vayevorchem, that the descent came after the benching, which would seem like in the pasuk. If that's the case, then we don't even need to tell you that it went down. Of course, they're not going to remain on the Mizbeach. So what does the Torah have to tell you that? Was that most ishver if after the bracha, that's when they descended? So why does the Torah have to say that they descended v'chlal? Was that most ishver? Was it on the gate to der Zelt wegen Yeridas Aaron? Why is it important to us to relate that Aaron descended? That's self-understood. As Nachum verendigen alles is that herabgegangen. After concluding everything, he descended, he went down. He didn't remain on the Mizbeach. So therefore, what are they saying? So Rashi is trying to explain like this. Now, der Vayered is given me'al ha-Mizbeach. Vayered was from the Mizbeach, which means vu'erat makriv given the korbanos. So Rashi is sort of saying he went down from the Mizbeach where he did the korbanos. When Akrovas HaGabonos is given far Vayvorach, and the korbanos offering was before. He went down from the Mizbeach where he was doing the korbanos, and that the korbanos was before Vayvorachem. With the Tzelt in the Parsha, as the Tzelt in the Parsha, that first he did the korbanos, then he blessed them. Und das made their pasuk, and what the pasuk means, by Yisa Goimer Vayvorachem, he raised his hands and he blessed them. A Mosai when miyad achar sheyorad min hamizbeach masois korbanosem. As soon as he went down, Vayisiyad Vayvorachem, Vayered ma'al hamizbeach, that after he descended of the mizbeach, that's what he then masois korbanosem. That's what he mentioned them. So they're trying to say that Rashi is saying Me'al HaMizbeach, to tell you, coming down from the Mizbeach, and then Vayvorachem, after Vayered Maaseh, which comes from Mizbeach, because that's where you do the korbanos, and then Vayvorachem. And that's actually, in their Pirush is Maaseh mit Pirush HaTeres Kohanim of Pasuk. This actually fits with the amateur of the Teres Kohanim of the Pasuk. Toras Kohanim says that the words have to be actually change the order. Vayered Maaseh Sachatos, then by Borachem. From Pasuk, Harizeh Pasuk Mesuras, that this Pasuk is switched around. It would not be fitting to say Elo Vayered Maasois Vashlomim, that he went down from making the Chatus and the Shlomim, and then Vayisar Vayevarachem, and then came the Bracha. Gefind. So this is different, not in the order of the pasuk that the bracha takes place before descending, but actually the bracha was made after the descending. And this idea that you can switch around a pasuk is something we find in Rashi as well, so it's not foreign to Pshutei Shel Mikra. Megfidem inyan for Mikra Mesuras, and we find this idea of a switched around pasuk oich in Pirush Rashi ala Torah in Parsha Shmois, also in Rashi's commentary in the Parsha Shmois. So we have this idea of a Mikra Mesuras. Of a Lifi Pirush Zeh is Tzorich in Godel. But according to this interpretation, we need this. It's difficult. We need to look into this. It's very difficult. Besides the fact that it says Mikra Mesuras is not such a simple, Rashi has to say it, if that's what Rashi means, if that's where Rashi learns. Nois of Lozeh, in addition to the fact, as the inyan for Mikra Mesuras is nit galatik in Limud al Derech Hapshat. This idea that the pasuk is swapped around is not so smooth when we study things according to the simple meaning. When Rashi will dos gemeint, had Rashi meant this, wollte dos gesagt beferish, then he would have said this clearly. Al derech pirushay in Parsha Shmois Anal, similar to the Rashi in the Parsha Shmois that we're referring to, where Rashi says over there that it's a Mikra Mesuras. So that's difficult in of itself. So in addition to that is Oid V'Ikar. But the main thing is that, first of all, in Rashi's commentary, we don't, when it says he descended Ma'alam Mizbeach, you don't see this whole shot that this took place first. In the Verter Ma'alam Mizbeach, Rashi Git Tzu, some Loshen HaPosik, in the words from the Mizbeach, Ayered Ma'alam Mizbeach, that Rashi adds to the language of the Posik, Zetmenit Kein Remes of Kein Zach, you don't see no hint for nothing. Noran Optaich as der Vayered is given Ma'alam Mizbeach. It just gives you a translation that the Vayered was from the Mizbeach. Und dem Inyan, Zetmen in the Posik Gufa. That we know in the pasuk itself, Vayered Maaseh Sachatos Gomer Kenal, as said before, meaning that he went down from the Mizbeach. That's this whole pshat that it took place earlier. Doesn't say that, says the pasuk. And Beis Abracha is doch nit an avedas Mizbeach. Abracha is not service of the Mizbeach. Is when the Werter Vayered Maases Gomer wollten Klau nit gestanden. So if the Torah would not have said Vayered, so you're trying to tell me that the Vayered took place after. We don't need the pasuk to tell you Vayered, so that you know that the Birchas Kohanim took place after he descended, because it's not an Aved in the first place. The Torah doesn't have to say Vayered. If the Torah would have just said that he blessed them, we knew where the blessing took place, because it's not an Avedas Mizbeach, so it's in the bottom. Why do we need to say Vayered to tell you that this took place after? Abrochi is doch nit an Avedas Mizbeach. It's not a service of the Mizbeach. Is when the Werter Vayered Maasos Gomer wollten Klal nicht gestanden. If the words Vayered Maasos would not have been written at all, But when euch gelernt as the Vayivorachem, then we would have learned is given Nochum Parendikun Zayin Avodah Ala Mizbeach, after he concluded the service, the Karbonis on the Mizbeach, Kimufurish Bikra, as the Pasuk says, there was the Avodah that was on the Mizbeach, that he went to the Am the Mizbeach to do the Avodah. And then, so when is Vayivorachem? Noch dem, where is Arab gegangen Ala Mizbeach? After he went down from the Mizbeach. So, what does Rashi want over here by saying Vayerid Malam Mizbeach? Hey, so the Bir B'cholzeh. So first of all, the Rebbe is going to say that Birchus Kahanim does not mean the mitzvah of Birchus Kahanim. That just means he said it, but not because there's a mitzvah. And he said it because that had a specific connection to his conclusion of Aaron. Hey, the Bir B'cholzeh. So what's the explanation of all this? Those was Rashi is mefarish Vayivorachem Birchus Kahanim. Rashi said Birchus Kahanim meinter nor kipshute mamash. He means very actually, only literally. Nit mekayim zayin a mitzvah Birchus Kahanim. Not to observe, fulfill the mitzvah of blessing the Kahanim. Or state in Parshas Nosser, which is actually in the portion of Nosser. Nor, what he means is, as Aaron vecha had gevolt benchen in the Sima Vedosei, but Aaron that wanted to bench the Yidden at the end of his service, it'll come on, as we will say later on, that when he finished the service, there's an inyan to bench, as we find earlier by Moshe Rabbeinu when he finished the service. So Moshe, when Aaron, he wanted to bench them. So out of his own, he chose what kind of a bracha is he going to give to you? What will be the bracha? On his own, he chose to give them the bracha to mention Eden mit the psukim from Birchas Kahanim, to bench them with the blessings of Birchas Kahanim. While der Teuchen from Birchas Kahanim is bepashtus masim, because the content of the Birchas Kahanim in very simply fits to the Zacha mit welcha Aaron, to those items with which Aaron had done Givol bench Eden. He wanted to bench them with them, and therefore he chose that. My time is Rashi mefaret, and for that reason, Rashi specified at the bracha is given yivarechecha yoeriso specifically because this was very specific what he wanted to bench him with. But die drei Wörter dricken ois dem Teuchen von Birchas Aaron. Because these three words, they express the contents of Aaron's bracha kidlakam siv zayin. The Rebbe will explain in siv zayin how this was the bracha. It's not the Birchas Kahanim. This is what he wanted to bless them with at that point. Yivarechecha yoir and Yisa, as the Rebbe will explain, how that is specifically associated with the Shekhinah and his accomplishment of bringing down the Shekhinah, the divine's presence. Midvos Aaron had gewollt benchen in Damot. That is with what Aaron wanted to bless the Yidden is Muban Bepashtus. Like Pirish Rashi. According to Rashi, very simply what he really wanted to bench them with. What did he want to bench them with? The Mekuvan for Mishkan is doch Mefurish Bekra. What's the intent of the Mishkan? Is as articulated in the Pasuk, Osu li Migdosh v'shachanti b'seifam. Make for me a sanctuary so I can dwell amongst you. As es zol zayin hashros hashchina in Mishkan. That there shall be the resting of the divine in the Mishkan. Kedei as zol zich oifton. And the hashros hashchina in Mishkan. In order to accomplish, to achieve the resting of the divine in the Mishkan, is nit given genug de avodas hayoim haregila for Shemini lemeluim. It was not sufficient. The regular service of the day of the 8-day inauguration. There needed to be more that Aaron needed to do on this 8th day to achieve that goal of getting the Shekhinah there. About which it's related. The portion of Pekudah in the end of Shmois, the Torah tells there the regular work that was done on the 8th day. But for achieving the actual resting of the Shekhinah, that wasn't sufficient. Notice that Gemus Zain, but it needed to be Verstate in Oneb von Unser Sedra, as it needed to be, as it's stated in the beginning of our Sedra, in the portion of Shemini. This is the items that Shem commanded that you must do. And then V'yera aleichem k'void Hashem. Then God's glory will be appeared to you. Was das meint wie Rashi is mefarish. What does that mean? This is that you shall do. Rashi explains. This is talking about the avodah of Aaron, the korbanos v'avodah von Aaron. We're talking about the sacrifices and the service of Aaron. While it is kedai v'choshev. He is worthy and he is important. Through his korbanos, through his service, then the divine will rest amongst you. Then you will know you'll know that Hashem has chosen him to be the one to bring down the Shekhinah. Und damit ist verstandig. And now we understand, since Aaron's goal and his work is to achieve the Hashros HaShechina, so we understand was Aaron had gebenched Eden b'siyum avedose, why he benched Eden at the end of this service, just as we find that Moshe, when he finished doing his part, he benched them. Beim Siyum of Melechas HaMishkan gefindt man, at the end of Melechas HaMishkan, we find in the portion of Pekudei, Rashi brings down over there, as Moshe had benched the Eden, that Moshe had blessed the Eden, Hirotzin Shetishra Shechina B'maaseh Yedeichem. Let it be the will that the divine should rest in your actions that you do. He blessed them that what the Yidden do, they should merit that the divine should rest. As dur v'osul migdosh, through making the sanctuary, soll sich ausführen der Meshachanti b'soicham, that the dwelling amongst you that Hashem said should be accomplished. Obemele is verstandig. So just like by Moshe Rabbeinu, at the end of building, he says that the divine should rest in the actions of their hands in the Beisam, in the Shechin, in the Mishkan. So Mele is understood as Vibal. Avodas Aaron by Yom HaShemini, since Aaron's service on the 8th day is the Avodah, so that's the specific service was Darf Oifton. The Hashros Hashchina Bepoil needs to accomplish the resting of the divine in actuality. So that's why it is necessary by the end of that Avodah of Aaron, Abracha Utfilah, a blessing and a prayer, because the Rebbe references the two ideas of a bracha and a tefillah, as a zol poil zayin puloso, that should accomplish what it is meant, the action, bringen hashros hashchina bepoil, to bring the hashros hashchina bepoil. And as the Rebbe will explain in Isaiah, the specific connection of Aaron and now, but the Rebbe, the specific connection with Aaron, with his brachas, what was supposed to be accomplished through Aaron's part in all this. But the Rebbe is now in Oizvav going to explain that this is different than the bracha that follows immediately We're going to say in a minute by Baruch, both Moshe and Aaron, after the bracha of Aaron, Moshe and Aaron give a bracha. It's also about the Hashros Hashchina. But that's not the same bracha that Aaron is giving here at the end of his specific avodah for his avodah. There is the general avodah, the completion of all the Mishkan, which is Moshe and Aaron together for all the Yidden. But then there is this bracha we're talking about is a bracha that Aaron is giving for his part to complete the Hashros Hashchina bepoel mamish. But l'chayre can man them fragen. L'chayre, can you ask why are we saying that Aaron is making a bracha? Because he's completing and he's asking that he should be successful in bringing down the Shechina. Gleich noch birchas Aaron steht, but immediately following the bracha of Aaron steht vayove Moshe v'Aaron gomer vayvorchas Am, that Moshe and Aaron both came and they blessed the people. Rashi touched us up, as Rashi translated, Amru, v'hinoyam Hashem Elokeinu aleinu. They said, let it be Hashem's pleasantness over us. And what does that mean? Let it be the will that the divine should rest in the actions of your hands. So, as Birchas Aaron is given a poil Hashchos Hashchina. So if we're saying now that he actually blessed them beforehand to have the Shechina rest, so why would they need once again have another bracha, Moshe and Aaron, for the same topic? He just blessed them for that. But the Rebbe says this is not a question, because these are two separate. Aaron was talking about his avodah, and this is talking about the avodas hamishkan in general. Is those ken kash in it? This is not a question. But those are these are two separate matters. Birchas Aaron is given verbunden mit seiner avodah pratis. The blessing of Aaron was associated with his specific service as that should accomplish its act to have the Shechina rest in actuality. That's his bracha for his specific avodah. One of them is massing the bracha from Birchas Kohanim, and that's fitting the bracha of Birchas Kohanim. Yivarecha Yoir Yisa, as the Rebbe will explain, Kidlakam Siv Zayin. But Mashenken Birchas Moshe v'Aaron Shalachar is there. But as opposed to when we talk about Moshe and Aaron's bracha that follows the bracha of Aaron, v'Yinoyim Hashem Elokeinu Yirotzi Shetir Shechina v'Masi Yidechem. It's a bracha that the Shechina should rest in your actions. Is a bracha klolis. That's a general blessing. Al sasiyum fun kol, when you concluded all klolos melechas v'avedas hamishkan, and the work and the service of the Mishkan. It does drikt sich aus in the zwei chalokim from the bracha as expressed in the two parts of the bracha. First, we say shatish shechina b'maisi yedechem. In what you did, there should be the act of your hands should be the divine. Refers to the Yidden did the work of the Mishkan, bringing all the gifts for the Mishkan, building the Mishkan, im leches ha-Mishkan for Yidden. That's the work of the Yidden of the Mishkan. That's the Ma'aseh Yedechem for Yidden. And v'hinoyam Hashem Elokeinu oleinu, and the pleasure should be on us in the Avodah b'meshach alla Shemini Yemei HaMiluim. That is in the service of the 8th day of inauguration that they did as a general. But now we're talking about the bracha of Aaron. That was the specific to accomplishing the Shechina to come down, that it was Aaron's job to accomplish that. As the Rebbe will explain, that Aaron needed after the Egel, even though they brought the Karbonis, the Egel was the interference, and the Eibishter is making the Mishkan to show that he's amongst the Yidden. And it is Aaron that has to accomplish that end result of the kapara for the egel, and then there can be the edus, then there can be Mishkan edus, the testimony that Hashem has forgiven them because Hashem is resting in the Mishkan. Zion. Der Tam verwosset sich gefordert David miyuchedes von Aaron. The reason why we needed the specific service of Aaron, so Oifton Hashros Hashchina in Mishkan, to accomplish the resting of the Shechina in the Mishkan, is weil Hashros Hashchina gekent sein erst, because the only way to have the divine resting, noch dem this is given the kapora gemura, only when there is the complete atonement of chet ha'egel, on the sin of the egel. You needed to first achieve a complete atonement for the chet of the egel, and then there can be the Shechina. As Rashi already explained, Rashi Shemefarish given, as Rashi explained, as der Far wer der Mishkan angerufen Mishkan ha'edus. That's why the Mishkan is called the Mishkan edus. What is the Mishkan of the? What is it a testimony to? So Rashi said, edus li Yisrael shevitar lahem HaKadosh Baruch Hu al ma'aseh ha'egel. This is a testimony for the Yidden that Hashem has forgone and forgiven them for the ma'aseh ha'egel. And Shari Hishresh Chinos B'neim, because he rested his divine amongst them. That's why it's Mishkan Edus. So the Mishkan is a testimony to the atonement for the Egel. Rashi brings that up in the Pasuk Shel Acharei, and as Rashi brings in the following Pasuk, as when Eden haben gesehen noch die Zayin Yimei HaMeluim, when the Eden saw after the 7th day of inauguration, Asis noch nit talking Ashros Hashchinam, that they haven't yet had the divine presence. So they argued, Kol hatoyrach shetorachnu, all the trouble that we troubled ourselves. Shetish Reshchina, we built the Mishkan, and we did it all in order. Shetish Reshchina b'neiha, so that the Shechina should rest amongst us, v'neida, and we will know Shenis Kapelon Avenegel, that the Avenegel has been forgiven for us. So we see that's the goal and the intent of the Mishkan. So we needed Aaron to bring about the complete atonement for the Egel before we can have the Shechina there. Those hat Aaron Poil given durch sein Aveda Protis. That Aaron accomplished through his specific service was their far, and that is why is that erster korban von Aaron given, the first korban of Aaron was an egel ben bokor lechatos. It was a calf, a ben bokor, which is a chatos, which is an atonement lehoidia, to let know shemechaper lo yakodesh baruch hu al yidei egel zeh al ma'aseh egel. Also to let know that Hashem forgives him by bringing this egel for a chatos, that Hashem is forgiving him for the act of the egel that he did. And this is was Rashi zog. This is what Rashi says, Birchas Kohanim, Yivarechecha Yo'er Yisa, associated to this atonement for the egel. Well, in the Verter from Birchas Kohanim, because in these words of the Birchas Kohanim, they express these three aspects, these three matters. Was Aaron is oisin given mit seinem bracha, that which Aaron wanted to accomplish with his bracha. Aleph is yivorechecha. Hashem is the one that is going to bless you, which means it's not Aaron but Hashem. Yivarechecha der Eberster soll dir benchen. He should bless you. The erste Zach is, the very first thing is, as the brache is nit von Aaronen. It is not a blessing of Aaron. Not his, it's Hashem's blessing. If it comes from Aaron, maybe Aaron is not perfect because he made the egel. If the blessing is from Aaron, then there can be an argument. There's room for an argument. Vibald as Aaron had gehat as shaychus to Maisei ha'egel, since Aaron had a connection to the act of making the egel. We can geben die bracha. How could he be giving the blessing? As soll sein die hashros hashchina, that there should be the resting of a shchina durch der kapora of Maisei ha'egel. By Hashem forgiving for the egel, he is the one that's asking it. But how could you say that when you're part of that? Nor Aaron bet as der Eberster allein, but he's asking Yevarechecha. Hashem allein zol bench niden. Yevarechecha. What is the bracha? The Teichen bracha is Beis Yoir. Yoir means as zol zayin hashros hashchina. Shine his face, ha'oras ponim de lamailo, the shine of the supreme, of the face of the above. Rashi touched up Yoir, as Rashi translate the words Yoir, Goimer in Parshas Nosei, Yira lecha, Yara lecha ponim soichakois, ponim tzuhuves. He will show you a joyous face, a face of a delight, a shining face. That means the presence of Hashem to be shown to you. Okidei. In order for this illumination of Hashem's face to be extended, and the resting of the Shechina, bet Aaron, therefore Aaron says, number 3, Gimel Yisa. As the Eibishter zol zayin anoisei oven. You should carry the sin. Rashi touched up Yisa. Yichbeish kaisa. Yisa means to conquer his anger. And to atone for the sin of the egel. This is what Aaron's bracha is in order to bring down the Shechina. Yivarecha, it's Hashem's bracha, that it should be Yoir, the Hashros Hashchina, through Yisa, through atonement, and carrying Yichbesh Kaisei, and to atone for the Avoina Egel. So now we're going to explain the second Rashi. Rebbe is not going to learn to change around like the Meforshim. Adrabah. Rebbe is learning that the bracha took place on the Mizbeach before Aaron descended. Based on this interpretation, we'll also understand Kavonas Rashi in the Dibra Maschu Shalachar, Rashi's intention on the following. Rashi says, Me'al HaMizbeach, from the Mizbeach. Rashi meant Kipashtus L'shoinei. Rashi means, as simply in the language, as Aaron is dan, that it's only then, noch vayivorchem, after he blessed them, arob gegangen from them Mizbeach. That's when he descended from the Mizbeach. Weil hat gebenched Eden seindig noch auf Mizbeach, because he benched Eden while they were on the Mizbeach. So what is Rashi telling us here? Und damit macht Rashi klar. With this, Rashi makes it very clear. As those was zogt in them frier dikun dibur hamaschet, that he had stated in the previous Rashi, that vayvorche means birchas koyanim, that it means birchas koyanim, meint nicht the mitzvah for Nesias kapayim ledoides, that he does not mean the bracha, the blessing, the mitzvah Nesias kapayim that comes from the generations, because otherwise he would not do it while he was on the Mizbeach. If it was the regular Birchas Kohanim, why is it on the Mizbeach? Not as is given a bracha miyuchedes von Aaron. That was a special bracha of Aaron, so he's doing it while he's on the Mizbeach. was kum behemshech, which comes as a follow-up, al siyum, and as a conclusion to sein devil diker avoid ala mizbeach, to his service that he did then on the mizbeach canal, as mentioned earlier. As the bracha is given, the blessing was as the avoida shelifnei zol poyel zayin pu'uloso, that the service that before should accomplish what it needs to accomplish, that needs to come together. That's the bracha is together with the avodah. Und the far is gesagt geworden gleich bismichus, and that's why that was said immediately, very close to the avodah, to the avodah. Und der far sein dich noch ala mizbech. That's why you say, well, it was on the mizbech. Und das ist euch, was Rashi bewornt mit seinem Pirush, Vayered me ala mizbech. This is what Rashi is coming to caution us by saying Vayered me ala mizbech. Because Lemnendik, the posik Vayered me asoy sachatos goymer bepashtos kumtuis, when it says he descended, it turns out that the posik will zogen, that the posik wants to say, as Aaron hat verendigt sein Avede mit Asiyas Hachatas Goymer, that Aaron ended the service with making the Chatas, so he went down. Vertlich is schwer. So it's difficult. Aaron hat doch schon freier geendigt the Hakroves HaKorbonis. He already finished the bringing of the Korbonis. So that was the end of his Avodah. And for was zog der Posik erst da, after the Birchas Kahanim, it says Vayered Ma'asois. Is it Rashi Mefarish? Rashi explained that Kavonas HaKosev is that here the Posik is nit zu der Tzeilen as Vayered Ma'asois Hachatos, that he concluded the Avodah, as it friending the Avodah. Because the Avodah was finished before. Nor Vayered Ma'ala Mizbeach. He concluded and he descended on the Mizbeach, because after that, the Posik is Oisen zu Zogen. The Posik is trying to tell you, as Erst noch Vayivorche, so he blessed them. And that's when he descended, because this is not the Birchas Kahanim, this is Bracha. Is Vayered me'ala Mizbeach. Then he went up to Mizbeach. Usis ki'ilu v'impossible gishtana Vayered me'ala Mizbeach, as if the Pasuk said he descended from Mizbeach. Not that he concluded the Avodah then, but the Pasuk said that Vayered from the Mizbeach. Und the weite dike Werte ma'asois hachatos, that the Goymer, making the chatos and the Korbanos, that's like a parenthesis. Was erklärt, wie kommt Aliyas Aaron of Mizbeach? Why is Aaron on the Mizbeach in the first place? Nicht zu lieb bei Borachem, nor zu lieb as Yisachatos Gemer. He was there because of that. But he waited until by Borachem, and then he went down from the Mizbeach, because that was in association, that bracha, with the accomplishment, with the avodah that Aaron was trying to achieve. In Oistes, the Rebbe brings down that there is a, depending upon when the bracha, the Birchas Kahanim, if we learn that it's Birchas Kahanim, does it take place before the Evorim of the Talmud or not? Because that's if we say that was the Birchas Kahanim. Let's look at Oistes, but now it has nothing to do with Birchas Kahanim. A Pikol Hanal test is verstandig, and based on all the above, it's understood as from Pirush Rashi do ken men nit wissen shitosei al derech hapshat. We don't know from here Rashi's, according to the Pshat, the Birchas Kohanim L'Doiris, when was the Birchas Kohanim in the Beis Hamikdash? When did they do the Birchas Kohanim? Tziz Mano is Lifnei HaKtoras Evorim Shal HaTomid, or the La'acharza, whether the burning of the limbs comes, the Birchas Kohanim comes before you burn the limbs of the Korban Tamid, or the Birchas Kohanim comes afterwards, because it depends if we place it in the pasuk. It brings down, the Rebbe brings down from the Malbim, if it's a mikra misuris, so that the first we have the bracha. I mean, not if first we have Vayered, and then we have the Birchas Kohanim. So then it means that the Haktoras Hevorim comes before the Birchas Kohanim. But if the bracha comes before Vayered, that means the Birchas Kohanim comes before. But according to Rashi, this is not Birchas Kohanim b'chlal. Kavanos Rashi mit zayin Pirush Birchas Kohanim. So we can't make any determination what Rashi's view is, because when Rashi explains Birchas Kohanim, mit zayin Pirush Birchas Kohanim, is not a kiyum mitzvahs Birchas Kohanim. He's not talking about fulfilling the mitzvah of Birchas Kohanim, nor as Aaron oizgi klibun zu sagen die bracha. He just chose to say the bracha. Aber die Matore von der bracha is given, but the purpose, the goal of that bracha is given als ein inyan meyuchad von jenem tog. That was just something specific for that day. Bekesher, in association, in connection, und als asiyum, and as a conclusion, zu seiner avodah miyuchedes von Shemini L'Meluim Kanal, to his specific avodah of the 8th day to bring down the Shechina, as I said before. But we can't totally detach it from the Birchas Kohanim. Afal pi as Birchas Arin Dan is given an inyan miyuchet, although then it was a specific matter. Yenem Tog, for that day of Shemini L'Meluim, is over a brocha v'shot apula nimshachas. Yet it's a blessing that has a continuous impact of all deidus, for all generations. For a mavodas Aaron, because the service of Aaron, Vasiyuma is Birchos Yanal, which concluding of that avodah is the blessing that he gave at the end, as said before. That accomplished Kenal Sivhei as Ezol Tzudik Verun Dashros Ashchina Lamato, that we should get back to the resting of the divine below. Noch dem Siluk Ashchina Durch the Chatoim Shalifneze, after the Shechina has been removed through the sins that preceded it, in an Eufen, in such a way as from them on, that from that point on, from Aaron's accomplishment, the divine presence is below for eternally, always. We have constantly the power of Aaron's blessing. Even at nighttime. Even outside of Eretz Yisrael. When there is no Nesis Kapayim every day. Nighttime, there's never Nesis Kapayim. Even in Eretz Yisrael, Chutz La'aretz, we don't have Nesis Kapayim. We still get the Pulanim Sheches from the Avodah of Aaron, that gives the power, the strength, so that we can go through this dark exile, bis zum Oifta Nochamal, until we will once again accomplish the Gilu Shechina, the revelation of the Shechina, v'shachanti b'soicham, I will rest amongst you, in the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi, in the third Beis Hamikdash, Sheibone b'mheru v'yimeinu mamish, will be built spiritually in our day in mamish. This is Mesichas Shabbos Parshas Shemini, of Shin Lamed Dalet.